I want to kind of go over this again because it's hard for a lot of people to grasp, but when you see it, when you finally see it, it's all you see. You'll understand it. From Genesis to Revelations, all of these stories are talking about ascension, awakening to your true self. Okay, every one of them is talking about that. But most people, religious people, only see parables. They only see stories. And they're always looking, sorry about that, somebody broke a glass. I'm telling you, this matrix does not like the truth, so it tries to stop you all the time. Anyway, most people only see in parables, and they're looking for something or someone to worship. But if they come to the true knowledge of themselves, of who they are, if they wake up the old sleeper, they'll come to the knowledge of the truth. And that's what I want to get into right now. In Ephesians 1:4, it's written, He, meaning God, chose us in Him before the foundation of the world. In Him. And if you look at that word for in, it means from within God. It's something that acts from within. So He chose us in Him. So we were with Him. We were part of Him. You're a piece of God here. He chose us in Him before the foundations of the world. That means you were with Him when He created everything. Before Abraham, I am. You remember in Mark chapter 4, verse 38, where Jesus is asleep in the stern of the boat. The stern is the farthest part in the back, and he's in the boat, and that in Greek it's called a vessel, and we are the vessels of God. Okay? Jesus was asleep in the very back part of the vessel, meaning in the very deepest recesses of you. God is there. But what the disciples did, and disciples mean someone who can be taught, someone who is learning. They woke up the teacher. They aroused him. He woke from his sleep. The master teacher is within you. They awoke the master teacher within them, and what did he do? He rose up and he rebuked the storm. Okay? But his head was on a pillow. And you look at the Greek word for pillow, and then look at its origins, where it come from, where that word come from, and it's a cornerstone. Jesus is the chief cornerstone. Chief cornerstone holds two walls together. If you don't have a cornerstone and you just got two walls cornered up to each other, they're wobbly, they're unstable. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. But if you have a cornerstone, which is Christ in the middle, it secures it. It makes it solid. Can't move it. It's the same with Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified and buried. There's Christ in the middle, and the two thieves on each side. What'd they do, the two thieves? They broke their legs. You know, they couldn't stand. They didn't break the legs of Jesus. Okay, and so he's the cornerstone. It's Golgotha, place of the skull. All right? So if the master teacher has been awakened in you, that means God has arisen. He has opened up his eyes in you. And you come to the true knowledge of yourself. Remember, Jesus said, don't you know that you are God's? It's not an ego thing. It's just coming to the knowledge of who we are. If we come from God, and God is love, and in him is no darkness, then that is what we have to get to. The purity of God within us. And whenever we get to that, that's what God is. That's why Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. The Father and I are one. because he reflected what God is. God is love. Remember, Peter wrote, said, no one has ever seen God. God is spirit. But we reflect his spirit through the love that we share. That love that radiates from us. Remember, he said, no one has ever seen God. Remember, Jacob wrestled with God. He named the name of the place, Peniel, for I've seen God face to face, and my life was preserved. And that word preserved in Hebrew does not mean saved. It means raptured. It means snatched away. So he lost his life. He died. His self died. That part, this earthly part of him died. And he come to the knowledge of who he was. That's why Moses, he asked if he could see God's face. And God said, no, but you can see my back. Moses couldn't cross over. He couldn't cross the Jordan. He couldn't go into the promised land because he had religion. He didn't come to the knowledge of himself. Remember, he was supposed to speak to the stone, and the stone would give them water. Remember, God is a fountain. And he struck it instead. Okay, and whenever Jesus was hanging on the cross, and the Roman soldier came and stuck him in the side, remember, he's on Golgotha, the skull. Stuck him in the side, and what came out? Blood and water. Remember, the life force of Christ is in the blood. The life force is in the blood. The life force is in the blood, and the fountain of living waters gushed forth. Okay, and what did it do? It went down on the ground. Golgotha, the skull. And Golgotha was also a garden. It's where they buried Jesus. So all those who are dead got watered in the garden, the living waters. And you remember when Jesus healed the blind man? And the blind man, I see people walking around, and they look like trees as trees. He was seeing people in the Garden of Eden. The dead in Christ will rise. Those who are in Christ. The dead in Christ rise first. They ascend first. Those who are left behind, they will arise later when they come to the knowledge of themselves. And they'll meet Jesus in the clouds. The clouds is a large gathering of people. It's all the people who already know themselves. And that's when we assemble together in spirit, not a literal place, but in spirit. We assemble together. The dead in Christ rise. Because you've been watered in the garden. You rose from the dead. You come to the knowledge of yourself. Once the master teacher is awoken in you, there's no need for anybody to teach you. You don't need anything. Everything is inside of you. Everything is within you. Your strength comes from within you. Comes from nothing outside of you. You don't have to do anything but be in the presence of God. And God will tell you everything you need to know, and he will give you the strength to do everything that you need to do. Simple as that. And you will be nourished from God, from his spirit. Anyway, I love you all. God bless.